Hey everyone, welcome back. It's been a long time and I had to take a long break from doing any YouTube videos for a while. There was a few different things that happened in my personal world where I couldn't talk about certain things. And unfortunately too, I had a stalker, YouTube online stalker, that decided to break into my world and make it a little difficult for a little while. Um, so welcome back. I hope that you all are doing really well, and I hope that 2019 is showing itself to be a year of freedom, of new choices, of consent versus no consent for you, and that you feel stronger and you feel more at peace about the world in a lot of different ways. Privately, regardless of the strange things that have happened to me personally, from being very public about certain things, I feel that. I do. And recently I learned about Jordan Peterson. And I want to give a special shout out to Jordan Peterson for what he does. In the art world, in my realm, not necessarily in the eloquent ways that he talks, I've been talking that in many different facets. The idea of believing in your freedom to express positivity, hope, joy, how to change things no matter where you are in the world. You could be in a very humble place, you can be in a very influential place. It doesn't matter. You're put in a specific place at any given moment, and you have the decision to make it better or make it worse. You can make it hell, or you can try to inspire those around you to make it heaven. I've lived this in a very private way in many different realms, and this year has really challenged me. 2018 to now has really challenged me to be in many different various levels of social and professional situations that sometimes it's really humble, sometimes it's really influential, or at least maybe you think it is. But at any rate, it always teaches you that no matter where you are, you can lift people up or you can bring it down. Most recently, well, back in December, I had been going through a lot of tough financial situations because of, well, you can imagine being out there in the world and talking about certain things that tend to trigger people. It can be very difficult to connect socially, professionally, financially, all those different things. And I took on a position where I was hoping would create abundance. But it meant that I had to be quiet about certain things that I know are a higher conversation in the world. And there's so many amazing people on YouTube that have just run with it. And it's wonderful to see. And I hope that they are doing abundant, they're able to sustain abundantly. It's a difficult thing to do because here's the thing in this world: vice makes money. I mean, really think about that. Right up until now, vice makes money. Virtue is free. And virtue talking, and I'm not talking about virtue signaling, I'm talking about virtues. I'm talking about when you decide, I don't want to be part of a lower conversation that sells people on a really negative level. I'm just trying to make a dollar. I'm just going to try to sell something that actually destroys people. And that can be from as low as the 2-bit drug dealer on the corner to big pharma, you know? Or it could be all kinds of different things that, you know, in your heart is not necessarily a virtue. Virtue is a tricky thing in a capitalistic world. It goes like this. You can be selling a product, and if you're not virtuous in the way that you're selling a product, you can make short-term money, but you're not really going to, in the long run, succeed. And there's going to be a lot of destruction. But if quietly you are trying to follow virtuous ideals of being honest, doing your best, lifting up other people in your world to help them succeed as well, that it's not just like the owner of the company is making all this money and everybody else is a slave to the system. There's abundance that grows from that. There's dignity. There's confidence. There's power in that. A lot of people don't talk about that. It's behind the scenes. And then you wonder why certain companies grow strongly in a really positive sense, but they will never really publicly talk about virtue. Then it goes to direct from the source to the people. And that's kind of what teachers, artists, musicians, people that directly connect with the public, what are their choices? What do they decide to do? You'll notice with a lot of famous people, they don't talk about virtue, or maybe they kind of do, but it's not quite evident in the action. They get really successful. For instance, you'll have an artist that will say, I love people and I believe in feminism, or I believe in all these different things, but then they'll kind of do the opposite of shaking their booty and getting to the lowest denominator of sex, drugs, and rock and roll to sell ultimately what they do. That's really popular and it makes a whole bunch of money. But what doesn't make a whole bunch of money for artists or musicians, writers, screenwriters, filmmakers, direct entrepreneurs of craftsmanship is talking directly about virtue, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it grates on individuals in the public scene because there's more people than not that secretly behind closed doors, they're aligned with vice. You know, they pretend on the outside that they're this certain personality, but behind closed doors, they're getting onto porn, they're drinking a ton for the negative reasons. I don't think that there's anything wrong with necessarily having wine or having drinks. It's all based on your intent. You know, if your intent is just to have a good time and you're still the same person that you are and you're happy and you're joyful and you're having a good time with your friends and you're talking really amazing things, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're using alcohol or different vices that don't necessarily bring out the best in you, that make you attuned to things that can denigrate yourself or denigrate others around you, there's a problem. And I think that unfortunately in our society in the last 40 years, there's a whole shadow side of people, and they don't want to hear about virtue. They don't want to hear about the hope and the joy and the peace of raising it up a bit. So there's the conundrum. And in my world, what I've experienced, being involved in all kinds of different things, I realized at the end of the day I had to make a choice of what was my conversation with the world, and we all struggle with our the way that we grew up, the familiar language, familiar actions, habits, community that we were in, and acceptability. We struggle with being financially secure. We struggle with all kinds of different things, temptations. So I get all that, and in no way, shape, or form would I ever want to come across as being judgmental to those that struggle with it. But at the end of the day, there is a huge void of conversation in our society that allows the language of lifting up people out of the vices and knowing that there actually is a world that is absolutely 100% real, that you can live by, that you can speak your highest truth and speak your joy and your imagination in the best sense possible, and give it a chance to live it out, regardless of the fears of what we think will not be accepted by society, and therefore why even do it? Because what's the point? We will be broke. We will have no one aligning with with what we're talking about, and we'll be this strange anomaly in the world, because everything is going towards the vice, right? But then you see the exceptions of who's actually truly successful. They follow those virtues. They don't necessarily always publicly talk about it. They don't share it, but it's in them personally. I guess I'm one of those fools that wants to talk about it publicly. There's a price to pay for that, because there's backlash. What happens is that, unfortunately, when you're public about not necessarily being judgmental to other people that haven't heard this before, or maybe have been philosophically aligned with another idea, game changer, there's backlash in who are you to say that? Who are you to say that? And there's hate that comes from it. There's nastiness. There's a reaction towards it, because of the fears of being exposed to what maybe behind closed doors gets them off. All right, well, I get it. But do you want to continue living in that fear of not being exposed? And you don't even have to be exposed. I mean, no one needs to know the details of what, you've been struggling with. Maybe a very close friend, maybe a therapist, maybe your wife or husband. That's okay. It doesn't have to be public, and no one's trying to out you. It's just the idea of changing your mind and believing that something's better. And when you can change your mind, see, that's what virtue is. It's free. All virtue is changing your mindset to a higher belief system in what's possible in this world, and valuing more the people around you, and valuing what you do, and valuing what they do. You're not talking to them like you want a yard sale from everything they do. That's not the conversation when it comes to virtues, or believing in other people and wanting the best for yourself and for other folks. If you want the best for yourself, but you want to take everybody else down for yard sale prices, there's something wrong. That's not full alignment in virtue. In virtue is you believe fully the top notch of what you're talking about in life, regardless of what people understand at the time. That's been the hardest thing for me. I've struggled with being very open about things that have happened in my life that I know haven't worked, and things that have worked. But it's not really popular, but it works. And regardless of the backlash that I get, and I've gotten a lot, I still want to share it because I know it's real. And I say it from a heart of care for people, you know? And some people will get it and some people won't. No one wants to be treated like a slave, you know? And I hope that everyone can align with this conversation in the sense that everyone's talking now about equality, you know, this equality. How about value? How about valuing each other? Wanting the best for each other. And when one person succeeds, you can succeed too. You don't have to be jealous of them. You don't have to put them down. You don't have to sabotage them. It'd be kind of nice. Because if you encourage them and they become successful, don't you think that with what you have to offer, you can do the same thing with whatever gift you have? And that those people are going to value you at the same level because you valued them at that level, the highest level. That's how it works. Communism tends to want to denigrate everybody to the lowest base denominator, and everyone gets used up. Everyone gets used up. So how can we redefine capitalism into a really positive way of expressing the highest value for each other in our society? You know? I had to let go of that position. As hard as it was, I worked really hard to get into this situation. I thought it was the best thing. But you know, it's funny, your conscience gets the best of you. And your innate being of who you really are and what you're really supposed to do in this life will grate on you when you're not doing it. And it was grating on me, hardcore. And I realized I had to make a choice. Well, I always listen to my conscience. I always listen to my heart, you know, and I had to make a decision. So I have to fully go back and engage in art because that's what I know. That's what I'm built to do. I don't understand how to do much else at this point. And I love being able to engage folks through art with talking about higher perspectives of what can be and encouraging them in their own lives of what's possible and what's beautiful in their life and what's joyful. And it's not about pretending like the world is roses. I mean, trust me, I know the world is not roses. We delve into all kinds of really tough stuff that's going on in the world. But here at the end of the day, so it's a system. You're in the world, you're learning, you navigate, you find out certain things that are going on that are really great, you find out certain things that are not so great, and you have to gauge, what are you going to do from you? What can you do for in your own world that you can make it a better place? It could be as simple, you could have a very simple janitorial job, but yet you come to that job with wanting to do the best and make everybody's life that you connect with joyful. And you care about everybody that's involved in your world, and you want to make their space clean, and when you talk to them, you encourage them. It's a beautiful thing. That's a joyful, joyful thing. You could be a CEO of a major company, and you could find out that, oh, you know what? What we're doing right now, it's going to make a whole bunch of money, but we're not really actually helping humanity. So let's change our mind. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but let's figure out what are our strengths to help humanity. What are the dangers of over control that we have that we need to make sure we hold on to with major integrity? And how can we benefit everybody rather than just get a whole bunch of money to sell everybody out? And if you've got a CEO that thinks like that and they're willing to change their mind, because maybe they didn't know that 10, 15 years ago that was the end game from the original owners. But now they kind of recognize some stuff. And it's okay. Nobody's perfect, and we go through all kinds of things, but changing your mind to a higher virtue to actually make the world a better place and not hide the shadows. Oh, well, we've been kind of involved with this or that that's not so good, and we're afraid of letting that get out, so let's just keep hiding and covering up and making a whole bunch of money for our shareholders. Yeah, that's not going to work, because there's always, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a come to Jesus moment. So changing your mind to making it actually better, you're not going to lose in the long run. You're going to succeed. There's a natural law in this world that, as much as it seems like connecting with virtue doesn't make a lot of money, it creates trust. And what's the first thing that you learn in sales or in any kind of company? You have to gain people's trust. And if you're not competent, if you don't know that you're able to give the best to another person with what you're giving to them, you're not providing them a service in all kinds of different ways. Like in the art world, my service is trying to create beauty and strong conversations that matter, that are very current, or sometimes they're a few years out in the making, but they make people think and reflect and can hopefully, possibly change the trajectory of their lives for the better. That's my personal goal with the work that I do. With a car company, with a home building company, with a design company, at the end of the day, you boil it down, and your ultimate success is based on making their lives better, more beautiful, more comfortable, more purposeful, safer, and more functional. If you can do that, and you do it at the highest level, and those are virtues, you're going to be successful, and you can't fake it, because people can sense when you're faking it. That's for sure. So my note of encouragement for everybody that listens to this because we can talk about all the details of what's going on and all the stuff, the politics, the business, the eco war systems. We can talk about all of that. At the end of the day, the way that my mind works, I try to find the most essential conversation that affects everybody wherever they're at. And what it comes down to is that you have the consent or no consent in your world. That is the most important thing. You also have the ability to change your mind between vice and virtue. You also have the ability of where you put your money at any given moment. You can also decide whether you want defeat or success. And sometimes that can be a little tricky if your success is tied into having to truly believe in what you do, regardless of the odds. And if there's something that I can say that's a note of encouragement for those that are out there, that they do put their hearts out on the line and they are living their dream and it's difficult. You are the change, and just keep going. And when you think that you need to change that in order to be safer, it doesn't work. Just keep doing and believing in yourself, and amazing things will come. Amazing things will come, especially if you're aligned with the highest God. I mean, 100%. It's going to happen, I promise. So that's the way to change the world. That's the way to change the world on an individual level. Who do you consent to buy your food from? Who do you consent to get your clothing from? Who do you consent that's going to get your money from all kinds of different things? And what do you put out in the world that you know is the best you can possibly do? It's so important right now because there's a huge shift that's going on. It's not going to last much longer making money out of vice. I just want you to know that. There's a lot of these things are getting shut down. And it's good because it creates pain. It creates suffering. It creates loss. It creates death, ultimately, in your life. If behind closed doors, and I say this with all understanding and care and out of love, if you are tempted constantly into secret conversations that pull you into those kind of conversations, it creates death in your own life. Do you want that? And if that's what you're aligned with secretly, but maybe you are trying to voice your political opinions on making the world a better place, maybe you need to recalibrate. There's a lot of people that are politically aligned with things that are not lifting up human dignity, but they're good orators. There's a lot of companies that say, don't be evil, and yet behind closed doors, they are. We don't like to look at the beast in the face because somehow we can benefit from it on a very superficial level. It's convenient. The convenience store mentality. What do convenience stores sell you? Do they sell you health, wealth, abundance, savings, and joy? Nope. They sell you vices and junk food, convenience. Do you want to have a convenience store life? Or do you want to have a truly abundant life based on life? That's what I've had to re-grapple with. And I can't be shut up about it. And I have to continue with creating art. And hopefully people will care about it someday. And hopefully it will matter someday. Does it? You know what? It matters regardless. It really does. You have no idea how your personal interactions can change other folks around you. And most times when they're really good, you'll never see it. But it happens anyway. You may never get a thank you. You may never financially get something from that. But changing someone's life for the better when they personally need to hear something, a good word, and you were a willing vessel to share that, or maybe your art, or maybe your song, or maybe the way that you approached your business or your job inspired them to believe in humanity again, that people actually care. You have no idea how that can change another person, you know? So yeah, it is important. So I'll leave you with that tonight, and sorry for the long exodus that I had to go through. It was rough this winter. I mean, straight up, when you talk about a lot of these things, you get some serious backlash. My information got sold onto the dark web, and there was some pretty wild stuff that happened. That's okay. I handled it just fine. You deal with it. Because ultimately, when you share these kind of conversations, this is what inspires people. And when I was listening to, I'm so grateful for the success and the attention, the listening that the audience that Jordan Peterson has now. It's so awesome to see. There was one comment that I read where someone said, if you don't have a dad, connect with Jordan Peterson. He through psychology, and I love psychology. If I didn't go into art, I wanted to go into psychology when I was in college. And he, through psychology and through Jung, who I love Jung, but Jung was limited in a certain way. And I think that Jordan Peterson is taking Jung's idea and going balls in to a higher mentality and a higher philosophy in so many amazing ways. I was a student of Jung, and through my art, you go into the symbolism. I've talked in the past with different videos about Carl Jung's Man and His Symbolisms, and how symbolism is extremely important in art, and how it subconsciously affects so many people, whether they realize it or not. Jordan Peterson is able to talk on a very practical level about how to build yourself up and not feel like you're doing something wrong by believing in hope and believing in bettering yourself and bettering the people around you and believing in optimism and hoping and walking the walk to make things better, not just living in this life is crap and this is all I've got and I'm going to live in misery and I'm going to have self-hatred and I'm going to think paranoia about everyone else around me, that they're going to think the worst of me, and have all of these different boundaries and boxes to keep us from connecting with each other and saying, okay, you're in front of me and I'm in front of you. How can we help each other benefit in this life in a good way? Do you need a good word? Do you need something from me? Do I need something from you? In a way that creates goodness. It's a beautiful thing. So if you haven't listened, and I'm sure my subscribers already know about Jordan Peterson, but if you haven't listened to his conversations, I highly suggest you take a moment and you delve in, and you're going to be better off for it. And I'm doing my best with art to try to be on that plane as well, and believing in folks that need to be heard, that in the art world they get thrown off to the sidelines. So at any rate, have a great night, and I will be talking to you much sooner than later from now on, and believe in good. Think it, act it, make it happen, and listen to your gut. It's all going to work out just fine. You're going to be fine. All right. Take care.